regular monthly village board meeting for the village of Sister Bay on Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. Janelle, will you handle roll call, please?
Zashki,
Here.
Baker,
Here.
Bertle,
Here.
Bell,
Here.
Cox,
Here.
Lyons,
Here.
Kadunkel,
Here.
and then we also have outgoing trustees Duffy
Here temporarily.
and Nino.
Here.
Excellent. For those of us who would like to join in, we will stand and on the count of three, recite the Pledge of Allegiance. 1, 2, 3. I pledge
I pledge
allegiance
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I will motion that we approve the agenda with one change. We will move up the closed session to immediately following business item number 6. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. I will motion that we approve in one group the minutes from the following meetings as published: March 15th, 2022, March 23rd, 2022, and April 6th, 2022. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. There was a significant stream of correspondence we all had access to. I'm, in the spirit of time for this evening, I'm going to bypass any kind of summary of the correspondence we're all aware of, unless there is a particular item of correspondence that a trustee would like to ask questions about. Chad?
Yeah, in relation to Diane's letter, I think that's maybe something we should read.
Diane's letter will be part of the closed session. And
How does that fall under closed session? How is that under closed session?
how does it fall under closed session? Because
Yes.
because she sent it to the full board, carboned our attorney, and it's a personnel matter that she raises, and personnel matters is already on the closed session to be discussed. And I sent Diane an email earlier this evening telling her we looked, which you would have seen if you looked at email before the meeting, perhaps.
I did see it.
We look forward to speaking with her about that during close tonight.
But it says to consider employee promotions, compensations, and performance evaluation data of any public employee. That's not what this is. I think we should read this letter. We can't talk about it under those circumstances.
Also to confer with legal counsel for the government body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted. Denise?
Does Randy Nesbitt want to comment on that?
I'm in the closed session, or have been invited to the closed session for that very reason, I understand, to
This isn't a
confer
big,
and give legal advice, so that,
this isn't a big deal. We just need to talk about how we interact with staff, right? This isn't a big secret.
We do not discuss as trustees how we interact with staff during correspondence.
Yeah, but interacting with staff is a lot different than compensation and workforce for performance.
I don't know anything in the League of Municipalities directions to villages and boards that would point to this not being applicable to our closed session this evening.
Okay.
I guess
to consider-
I would like to hear from Diane, since she is our administrator and the professional here, what if she believes it should be read under correspondence or this should be under closed session?
I personally don't understand the connection to closed session because it's not a personnel matter, nor is there pending litigation. It's just correspondence requesting, and I agree that there shouldn't be discussion on it because it's not a separate agenda item, but to read it during correspondence, I don't understand why it would not be.
I don't think there should be discussion on this in private. I don't think this is a personnel matter.
I would agree with Chad that this should be read in as correspondence since it is not a closed session item.
Okay, so we'll read it in as correspondence. And to Diane's point, she doesn't intend for there to be any discussion on it, and then we'll proceed.
Since we have Diane here, do you want to read this letter? I mean, that might be more appropriate if you're comfortable.
I would, but I'm actually remote
Okay.
because I'm between meetings, so I'm limited on what I have availability to right now.
Okay,
I'll read it.
I appreciate that.
Board, I'm asking the board to address questions and concerns related to direction of staff, including contracted staff are being given. Specifically, staff are being directed by individual board members. This is concerning and problematic for staff because village president trustees do not have authority to individually in their individual capacity. The governing body has collective authority only. Staff is unclear if the corrective body supports the directives and individuals who are directing staff or is aware of the direction being given. Some directives, from individual board members are contradictory to direction staff is given by committee and or other individuals. Village staff and contracted staff, MSA, feel the result of this activity is that we are put in a conflictual position with board members that also result in inefficiencies, gaps in process, and frustration to both staff and elected officials. Therefore, to address these concerns, I respectfully request the board collectively provide a clear path for staff regarding organizational structure and chain of command. And when it comes to suggestions for the next meeting, we should put this as an agenda item. Thank you.
That was part of the letter that we should put this as an agenda item at the next board meeting.
Oh, that was my, sorry, that
Okay,
was
so
my,
why are you adding commentary to what was going to be the letter that was
sorry,
read?
shouldn't have done that. My bad.
Okay.
I'll do it on item number.
And in
23.
multiple instances, with keen insight in past history, you have always emphasized the flow of issues related to personnel and staff, various committees going to the proper committee, and then from the committee going up to the board, correct? So I would
Yeah,
say that,
but I think
I
this
would
is a
say
board issue.
regarding your point about thinking that this goes to the board next meeting, I think it's up for discussion as to whether it's a personnel committee item. But
We
we can
probably
sort
shouldn't
that later.
discuss, right, Rob? Let's
Okay.
not discuss.
Okay. Do we have any comments or concerns from the public who are present this evening on a non-agenda item? Okay, hearing none, I will ask Heidi to proceed forward with item number 1, the swearing in of newly elected trustees and recognition of departing trustees, Pat Duffy and Vivian Nino.
So the Denise, Don, and Mary should have received in the mail, because we are virtual, your official oath, and hopefully you have that somewhere. So I'm just going to collectively read this with all of your names, and you can affirm to it by saying "I will" at the end. Do you, Denise Spurto, Don Cox, and Mary Lyons, having been elected to the office of village trustee, but have not yet entered upon the duties thereof, swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of your abilities?
I will.
I think we got some "I wills" there.
I will. Yeah.
All right. If you wouldn't mind signing those and then returning them to me, I will get them in the appropriate file. So thank you very much for being here and serving. We also want to extend a big thank you to Pat and Vivian, who are leaving the board. I don't know, Vivian and Pat, if you have your plaques near you, but because again, we are virtual, we didn't have the opportunity to present these in person, but both Pat and Vivian were given a plaque stating their name and their role as trustee with the years of service listed on it. So thank you so much for everything you've done in the past terms.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Vivian, I would like to emphasize, thank you so much for your leadership with the coastal byways. That was instrumental in the federal recognition of the scenic byway. We appreciate that and your other efforts. And Pat, thank you very, very much for your many long years of bullheaded, dogged, always Pat determination that we could always rely on no matter what to get the straight story from Pat Duffy. And the village is better for it and the community is better for it. And we appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Pat.
Yes, thank you, guys. Thank you both.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I just, last parting words would be, enjoy it. You know, you're given your time and everybody's here to try to do the right thing and works better together.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Pat.
you.
Been off the
Thanks,
board a
Vivian.
week and look how rested and relaxed he looks.
Yep.
Heidi,
Yep, I'm done.
okay, for the swearing in of the newly elected trustees,
Yep, we did it.
we're all good. Mary, Don, thank you very much for joining. We're glad to have you. Item number 2, report on county activities from the county supervisor, Dave Lenow. Dave, I see you're with us. Turn it over to you.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Dave.
Good day.
We, similar to you, the entire county board is elected in one fell swoop. All 21 members are elected. So the swearing in and the reorganization of bylaws and committees and everything else took place today. Took us 5 hours to get through it, but we did manage to get through it. I am happy to report that I was reelected as the county board chair for the next 2-year term.
Good.
And also, of course, this represents a new era in Sister Bay in that Bud Combs was sworn in for, was it Ward 2 that Bud is in? And I'm in Ward 1 for Sister Bay since Sister Bay was split during the last redistricting. So Bud is now on board also as a Sister Bay County Board Supervisor, as well as his portion of Liberty Grove. We did just a couple things to point out about our reorganization. We decided not to conduct any other business because we knew it was going to be a long meeting. We completely reorganized our meeting structure. There's about 40 plus committees at the county board level. We took several of the larger committees and combined them. For instance, we took our highway department, our facilities department, and our parks and airport department. And we combined them all into one called facilities and highway. And we used to elect those members at random from the county board. So there was equal distribution of somebody from the north and the south and the city. We elected to no longer do that. Those committees are appointed by the chair now, as are all the rest of the committees. And we also tried to consolidate as many committees as we could. Basically, we're down to 6 committees. There are some other ones, but by statute have to remain. So there's 10 or 12 of those out there that are required, usually for health and human services. And under state statute, they're required to remain separate. They include a lot of citizen members and just 1 or 2 reps from the board. So we had to keep those separate, but we tried to combine whatever we could as best we could. A couple of reasons behind that. The board, for the first time in its history, has gone to a salary rather than a per diem, instead of being paid per meeting or for travel and hours going to conferences on an hourly basis. It is a flat salary now, regardless of how many meetings you attend or how many conferences you go to. So that's a big change for the board. And that's why we tried to consolidate committees whenever possible. Because they're consolidated, there's a much larger membership to them. 5-member committees went to 7 or 9. Most of them are 7. And every committee, every one of the large committees, the top 6 committees, will now be noticed as a county board meeting. So anybody from the county board is welcome to attend them, to take part in the discussion, obviously not vote, because they're not direct committee members. And the idea behind this was to get more committee members involved at a higher level in the organization to understand a broader scope of what's going on within the county. If you're just on Parks Committee, you get just involved in parks. But now if you're on parks, you're going to get involved in parks, facilities, and highway. So you have a bigger role on the committee than you may have had in the past. And we're going to try it for 6 months at the county level every 6 months. So November, we have what's called an annual meeting, and that's an opportunity to reorganize it again or change anything that may not have worked out through this organization. So we're going to give it a trial for 6 months and see where we go. And that was the bulk of what we did today. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to respond. But we're having for the first time, also we're having a second meeting next week, and that we will conduct our regular board business at that moment in time. So. And I would also take a moment to personally recognize, of course, Vivian and Pat, both of them for what they've done over the years on the board. And when I was on the board and president, I certainly appreciated everything that they did. And just if I could shake both your hands and give you a big shout out, I'm here to do that for you. So again, thank you for all your service in the past years.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, we have Diane with us, our interim administrator, for several new business items. Items 3, 4, 5, and 6 on our list tonight. Regarding business item number 3, discussion regarding the applications that have been submitted on behalf of the Village of Sister Bay for funding through Senator Tammy Baldwin's fiscal year 2023 congressionally directed spending program for a new fire engine and infrastructure costs. Consider a motion for action if appropriate regarding item number 3 and Diane's memo to the trustees. That's part of the packet on page 43. During the discussion topics, discussion topic number 1 on page 43 of the packet clearly pertains to this agenda item. I'm not sure about 2 and item number 3 will be a closed session item for the full board at a future meeting. So with those notes, Diane, please take it away for number 3.
You're muted, Diane.
Okay.
There we go.
So a colleague of mine made me aware of Senator Tammy Baldwin's fiscal year 2023 congressionally directed spending program. The week, I can't recall the date. It was the Tuesday before the 10th. The 10th was the Sunday. The deadline was on that following Sunday. So it was a very short turnaround once I became aware of it. And in doing a little research on it, I felt that the fire truck and the infrastructure for the Mosaic Ventures development would be good candidates. I contacted Liberty Grove, or the fire chief and Liberty Grove, and then the fire chief also reached out to everyone between the 2 communities. And the fire chief put in an application or a request for the portion of the purchase of a fire engine, $950,000 on behalf of both of the participating municipalities in the fire district. And then I had submitted a request for $800,000 for the infrastructure related to the Mosaic Ventures development. And just to be clear, that is $600,000 for the village portion of the infrastructure. The total estimated cost or the commitment of the village for the infrastructure that is strictly required to service the development is a total of $800,000, and the county is putting $200,000 of their ARPA dollars for it, which brings it down to $600,000. But then the additional $200,000 is for that connection that the village wants to continue through of the 2 streets, but isn't necessarily completely required for the development. So I wanted to be clear on why it's 800,000. We're not trying to recover the 200,000 that the county is putting in. And I was clear in the application and in the letters of support that we received from, that I solicited from Senator Jacques and Representative Kitchens, that no matter what the village was in support, had already committed to it. But the thought process here was that if the village was able to get 800,000 for this infrastructure, the village would not have to shuffle around the money and would still be able to do some of the other road projects that you had intended to. So that was, I just wanted to explain a little about the reasoning on the money, on the amount. And then I was a little confused as to, and then there's the number 3 on that, where President Zosky had asked me about funding opportunities for that project, and therefore I put in for that.
Rob, for number 3,
Mhm.
I'm confused about this. I don't know anything about this. Maybe it came up in a meeting or something that I wasn't aware of.
It came up on a visit of mine to the village office with an inquiry that came into the village office that was brought to my attention by multiple staff members, at which point I took it over and learned very quickly via discussions with Diane that there was literally a window of a very short amount of time for a potential grant that might cover this, should the board at the appropriate time in the future be interested in the project.
Is this private property?
Subsequently,
Is this private property that you're talking about here?
subsequently, the
Is this
owners
private
of the-
property, Rob?
the
Is this
owners of the
village
property, the owners of the property requested that moving forward, we would, address it in closed session with the full board, and that's what we intend to do in an expedient manner.
So you're negotiating to buy property, you're having representatives and Kitchens in the Door County, destination Door County, write letters on this behalf. It's private property and it's something that none of us board members know of, and you're directing staff.
I'm not negotiating anything. I was passed.
I mean, you have to be if you're talking to people about it. I don't get this. I'm so confused by how this can be done. I mean, there was a meeting not long ago where we were very clear, Rob, that you weren't going to negotiate on behalf of the village. We were all uniform in that. I'm so
not
confused.
negotiating on behalf of the village. I took an offer that
private
came
property.
into the village and said it would be put forth to the full board in closed session.
But in the meantime, you're telling staff to apply for a grant on property that
I didn't tell, I told our interim administrator that this was something that would be going to the full board. Was there anything in the grant stream that might
So they didn't apply,
apply?
and you didn't tell them to apply, and they didn't apply.
No, I presented it to our interim administrator exactly the manner I just said. I said, is there anything that might apply for this that, should the board approve it in majority when it gets to the board, that could be applicable? And this is something that could be applicable. It's not binding. It doesn't mean we have it. We don't know if we could get it. If the board decides they don't want to pursue this offer, it's not something that we have to accept.
What offer?
Randy, would you like to chime in here, please?
I'm being respectful of, I'm being respectful of what was conveyed to me when I followed up on a phone call that was from a message passed to me from village staff.
This is a grant, right? We're applying for a grant. How can we talk about?
No,
this
it's
in
not a
closed
grant.
session? What?
It's not a grant.
What do you mean?
It's correct, congressionally directed spending. So it's the new version, the new words for the former earmarks.
Okay, so it's a public program, right? I mean, I assume public programs don't let you apply for property you don't own, negotiating with private people. That you don't talk to your board about. I'm just confused. I'm confused. I don't know what property. I don't know what's going on.
I guess,
We had 48 hours to turn in an application for this funding with the knowledge that this was going to the board for full board involvement in closed session. Chief?
So I'll just chime in. I submitted, like it says on number one, and so I had the opportunity to read through the application. And it really is not a grant. It is simply Tammy Baldwin asking for ideas and being educated on things that they could use for this program. It is not a grant. She's just asking for, look, if there's money available, bipartisanly, they're looking for different ideas on ways to do different funding under certain categories. I did submit on behalf of the two village and the town. I don't know how successful it'll be, but it is not a grant. It is simply a way to educate the politicians about needs within our communities, and then they'll go with it from there. Or at least that's how I did. That can chime in as well.
I appreciate that clarification, Chief. The other thing, Chad, is I was very clear with Diane in my line of questioning to her that there were, I imagined there would be various things that the board would question related to this. And did we need to have answers to some of those questions that could come up prior to submitting this request for the funding? And Diane's response to me was, at this point, just considering it under the specter of workforce housing and getting the application in on time is all that's necessary.
But are you
So-
talking to private individuals, private property negotiating for us to buy? Where did this number come from?
I didn't, you keep saying negotiating, and I haven't been negotiating. I was given,
Is this-
I returned a phone call and was given,
Are
I
we
was
building
given a
something on our
number
property?
on-
Is this our
What?
property we're talking about, Rob? Are we building something on our property, or are we trying to buy something?
I would have to, at this point, I would have to turn this over to Randy, because again, I don't think, under the circumstances, this is been handled appropriately. I told Diane that this was going to have to go to the full board. I don't, the owners of the property, and I agreed it would go to the full board in closed session, and we would go from there.
Do you remember us telling you not to represent the village in negotiations? Do you remember that?
Yeah, this was not, this was the returning of a phone call and a passing along of a situation that the full board will handle. So that, you have the information there as Diane provided it.
Does Kitchens know what he wrote the letter for, like specifically, or Door County destination? Because I don't know yet. Nate's got his hand up.
Nate?
okay, so I guess what I'm a little confused by is that we've got an exact dollar amount for an exact item. Now, if this is just going to be an earmark, does this just mean that we're going to have $2.23 million to spend on workforce housing? And I guess I would wonder that $2.23 million came from somewhere. But if that's what we're asking for, that sounds great. If it's something more specific than that, I understand wanting to get ahead on the grant on here, but or whatever this is, however the funding mechanism works from the federal government, however that ends up being. But if this is tied to the purchase of a property, which it appears to be based on the information at hand, I don't think that we should do that in the future, because it's going to damage the village if we were to get a grant offered to us and we turned it down. But I understand why it was done. I mean, I understand we're on a deadline. We need to ask for this money while we can. I think that we should just clarify moving forward. At least my opinion is, if it's going to involve, purchase of a property, I think that we need to have the discussion with the board before we do the application, even if we miss out on funding. That's my opinion on it.
And if this was a grant with stringent grant application requirements, I would understand and most probably be in line with your way of thinking. But it's not a grant. It's congressional funding. And as the chief outlined, it's as much a request from Tammy Baldwin's office as to what are the types of things that are out there. Then this is not binding. It doesn't mean we're going to get it. If the board chooses to say we're not interested, we don't have to pursue it any further.
I still stand, I hear what you're saying, because this is just a rough request and this was a rushed item. I still.
Well, then all I can say
agreed.
further.
Bob, I started speaking first. Give me a chance to finish. I believe we're all in agreement that we need to purchase new fire trucks. There's no controversial item there. That is something that we have agreed to. I don't like it because it's something that we have not even discussed before. Now we're potentially getting funding on it. I understand it's just potential funding and this is just an ask. But if we're going to ask on the village's behalf, we should make sure we're doing it on something that we agree upon, or at least a majority of us do. That's my opinion. I understand why this happened and this already happened, so we can't do anything about it.
So all I can tell you is that in my best efforts to best serve the village, I was well cognizant of the fact that every time in the past year plus, but certainly within the last year, at various committee and board levels, when the discussion of workforce housing and the specter of workforce housing has come up, there has been unanimous support at the committee level and unanimous support among trustees that something needs to be done.
Rob,
Something needs to be done.
It's how
And
it's
we had a short window to see if Tammy Baldwin and her congressional funding would be interested in something like this.
Randy,
So
can
I
you tell
was-
me your thoughts on this?
May I chime in?
Please, Randy.
Yes.
I don't look at this as a specific grant application, and that, Chad, to be quite honest, I'd have to agree with your line of thinking that that should be something that the board should authorize before a grant application is sent out. But when you're asked to provide information on a need in the community and what kind of funds might assist with that need, here it's a need that's been identified. The funds we could probably debate from now until the cows come home, and a number was selected, perhaps based upon a discussion that the chairman had. He could have used that number or another number. Apparently that's the number that came to mind when identifying this. But I don't think it's a bad idea to put forth a community need and identify some amount of money that you think might be used to aid that need. Now, obviously, if the board decides when finally presented with the idea of should we buy this property, maybe you'll want to do that, maybe you won't. And maybe there will be money available for housing, for workforce housing, and you choose to pursue another avenue to try to use those funds, which would be certainly appropriate because there's no specific, it's not tied to anything specifically. It's tied to the fact that we're just telling congressional people, we've got a need and here's an amount that we think might help. Maybe that was too high, maybe that was too low.
Where
And
did
this
the
was-
amount come from?
Just to clarify, Chad, just to clarify,
Where did the amount come
clarify,
from?
this was not a discussion that came to a number. This was the property owner saying, this is what we want to sell this property for. We would like to sell it to the village.
That's negotiating, Rob. I
I
gave you a price, you put it in a grant, and now we're talking about it.
listening to
negotiating.
listening to an offer and bringing it back to a full village board with the intention of letting all board members discuss it in closed session to the request of the property owner does not, in my mind, and my understanding of Webster's dictionary, be defined as negotiation. I'm conveying an offer that was made to the board.
Why didn't you say that right away about the number?
About what?
The number, when we ask you where the number came from.
He did.
I did.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then I didn't
Yeah.
hear you say that that's what
Yeah.
they offered.
Yeah.
To me, it just sounds like
This was not,
negotiating.
I said repeatedly, this was not a negotiation. There was no discussion about the number. It was, they literally, I returned a phone call. And the property owner said, you know, we want to help the village if we can. We want to sell this property. This is what we would have to get for it. And I said, let me take it to the board.
It should
And
go to
this
the
will
board
be-
before any,
Okay, and
way
I,
you try to get
so
money.
knowing we had a board meeting coming up, and I talked with Diane and I said, is there anything out here, and she's mentioned this. And I went over my 3 or 4 questions that came to mind that I would assume board members might have. And Diane said, at this point, don't worry about it. It's just, we keep it as work for it housing, put it in and see what happens. So that's where it stands. And I'll look forward to discussing it further in closed session at the May meeting, which gives us plenty of time. Okay, anything else on item 3, Diane, or should we move to number 4?
That's all I have on 3.
Okay, item number 4, discussion regarding the potential for the Village of Sister Bay to apply for grant funding that is available through the FEMA Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Program to help cover the costs related to the construction of a new village hall that is equipped with a storm shelter. Consider a motion for action if appropriate.
In looking through the village's CIP, I know that the one of the items on it in the future is the village hall. And I know that that's certainly a need. And just as part of the whole process, I always just keep an eye out on CIPs and what funding may be available. And one of the options for that would be FEMA funding if it was built to also serve as a storm shelter for people who don't have access to one in the event of a storm. So given the marina and given the number of seasonal visitors that do not have, daily visitors that don't necessarily have a place to shelter in, it was a thought for a possibility for funding for that. This is not a tight deadline. This is one where the first step would be a call to Wisconsin Emergency Management describing it and just finding out if this would be a competitive ask. And then Wisconsin Emergency Management, if they decided it would be a worthy project, then they would work with the village to put in an application to FEMA, which would be in January of 2023. And if awarded, it potentially has the ability of up to 90%, but that is for the cost of the building. It wouldn't include like the fixtures and stuff like that. So it really needs to be, it would be 90% of what the cost would be to make a building that would serve as a storm shelter. If awarded, it would be awarded and notified in August of 23. And then there would be 3 years to do the construction. So it's just something that the time frame looked about right. And so I brought it to the board to see if you would like me to contact Wisconsin Emergency Management to see if this would be a competitive project.
Hey Denise, this is your committee, right? Catastrophes and stuff. Can we make a nice village hall from a FEMA building?
One that hasn't met.
Well, that's not my fault.
And again, there's not a big rush on this. It's just that if it's something the village wanted, to pursue, I wanted to bring it to the board well in advance so that you had the opportunity to talk about it. And this is very common, actually. There's examples of these in, it's commonly school districts that do gymnasiums. And then there's also village halls that it's how it's built structurally. So it's not like this ugly storm shelter that's, an underground bunker. It looks like a village hall, these kind of things. So it's just I wanted to bring to the board and do as you please.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, I see no issue with making a phone call. I'd certainly like to know more details. Can we incorporate it into our bigger plan of an administration building and other things that may happen out on the Wilsey property as that plan progresses over the next few months? So a phone call, I believe, is appropriate.
Is there an individual at the village that you would like to be a part of the phone call?
If
I mean,
you're
I'll
going to
certainly
make
make
the phone
that
call,
call with-
Diane, you can update us afterwards.
Okay, will do.
And then is there, when you said there isn't a particular rush on this grant funding, Diane, is there a forward deadline time-wise for that?
There is, I mean, once, if you decide to do it, then you would actually need to have plans in January for the submittal in January. It is a heavy lift on the application. However, Wisconsin Emergency Management works with the village on that. I have not done one of these myself yet. I just am aware of the grant program, and some colleagues had some familiarity with it. But ultimately, the Wisconsin Emergency Management would have a go or no go basically in September. And that's where the state puts together their list of projects that they're going to advance to FEMA. So some may not make the cut. So that would happen in September, where Wisconsin Emergency Management, I think this one is very competitive because of the marina and just the uniqueness of Sister Bay. So I suspect that they will say yes, that they would support it. So then a lot of preliminary work would need to be done for the grant application to be completed in January.
So Diane, would it be acceptable with you if we put this as a repeat agenda item next month and then let you fill us in on the results of your phone call and where it might go from there with board discussion?
Yep, will do.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Item number 5, discussion regarding the increased funding levels that are available for surface transportation program, local bridge program, transportation alternatives program, and congestion mitigation and air quality program grants as the result of the passing and adoption of the bipartisan infrastructure law and the grant applications that have already been submitted for repairs to South Highland Road, Sunset Drive, and Autumn Court, as well as the potential for requesting additional funding through those programs between 2023 and 2026. Consider a motion for action if appropriate regarding this item number 5. I would mention on page 47 and 48 of the packet, there is some reference and street rankings related to 2023 through 2026 and potential roads that could be worked on during those years that refer to this quote potential for requesting additional funding through those programs for those years. I would note that previously at the Parks, Properties and Streets Committee level, we discussed with Dan Klansky, Dan creating a top priority ranking of streets needing to be repaired, that call it a top 10 list or his rankings on his ideas. And that when he had those rankings at a Parks, Property and Streets meeting, we could revisit them with the opportunity for Parks Committee members to weigh in, also with the note back in time that it's something that we might want to involve trustees in as well, considering the fact that road repairs and which roads are a priority and whether sidewalks included on roads, et cetera, are a priority really is a deep-seated issue and problem in various areas of the village that is of heightened concern up to and including the trustee level. So with that in mind, I don't want to put the cart before the horse as far as Dan's ideas on which of those roads for the future need to be worked on. As the packet information related to this item notes, June 3rd would be the particular deadline, I believe, for a potential requesting of additional funding for those years 2023 through 2026. That does give us a window of opportunity for bypassing that tonight, since it is due to go back to Parks first. We'll look forward at the May Parks meeting to get Dan's prioritized ranking list. We will endeavor to limit the agenda items at that Parks Committee meeting to allow sufficient time to discuss Dan's rankings and for Parks Committee members to weigh in. And we'll see where the committee stands at the conclusion of that meeting. But I would think that it would certainly be in the realm of possibility that the majority committee would recommend that we involve the board and trustees in the opportunity to consider the prioritized rankings of roads, and that perhaps something along the lines of a special pre-board meeting packet for May with the rankings of those roads based on Dan's assessment and any commentary Parks have could be distributed to individual trustees so that at their initiative, they would have time before the May board meeting to examine the roads themselves or consider the topic further, so that when we do meet at the May board meeting, we could have a substantive, informed discussion that would lead to a decision that would still give us time to reach that June 3rd application deadline. Chad, you had your hand up?
Yeah, Dan, does that work time-wise? I know that seems like it's cutting it close.
It does. Pretty much the list Diane has there, if everyone is on that page, you can kind of see that that is my list. One of the things in applying, I'm going to meet with Robert E. Lee on the 27th, walk these areas, get everything put together, get the numbers together for the project and the actual construction. And I understand where you want the input. That will be months or years from now, because for each road, for any federal grant, you have to submit complete plans. So this is something that will go before you. You will be able to look at it and say, I want this. You can we can go through each plan for each road. But right now, I kind of just need to get the cost description, put everything together. If everyone's looking at my list right now, if there's something in there and you say, I don't want this paved, please let me know before I work up the numbers and go through the process.
Are you referring to 2022, your 3 roads, Dan?
2023, yes. Mill Road, Parkview, Maple, and the other section of Parkview Lane.
Okay, Denise?
So on the grant applications that have already been submitted, South Highland, Sunset, and Autumn, from what you said, Dan, is it my understanding that the road width, whether we add sidewalks, that can all be determined yet in the future?
Well, I would bid out different sections with curb and gutter. Storm is included in these bids. So it is something that you could look at and decide. Yes, I would bid at probably the highest cost. And then you look at it and say, no, Dan, we don't want sidewalk. We want this, I would include everything and you can strip it down or do what you want with it. But I will try to ensure the cost is available so you can do what you want with it.
Dan, I
Because
gotta,
on the big spreadsheet page on 48, the only sidewalk that is slated on the spreadsheet
That is not an updated spreadsheet. That is one I created to turn in for last year. This road list that you're looking at on page 45 will be updated to include whatever we determine when I meet with Robert E. Lee, what they think would fit in that area.
So those specific roads will come to Parks for us to have the conversation, how wide we want the road, where the right of way is, if we want to add sidewalks, etc. Or if we want a paved shoulder instead of a sidewalk where that may be more feasible. And I guess I have a question about the difference between pulverize and mill and overlay and pave, as there's a difference on the roads. Can you explain specifically what that means?
If
Yes.
first,
why
if
they're-
I could just, if I could
Go
just
ahead.
say something regarding the two different categories here, though, I think there's some confusion and some blending here. The item number one, the federal fiscal year 2022 local program solicitation, those were the ones that were due April 1. That one was, it was notified in January, and then there was about a month and a half of webinars and everything to try to grasp what they were asking and what was allowable. And ultimately what came out of that, excuse me, is that the state was looking for fast projects that were shovel ready and could be done. And they said mill and, basically resurface only, no reconstruction, no environmental issues, no real estate acquisition needed, no utilities. It just needed to be simple mill and overlay type of projects to qualify for that April 1 funding. So it was just the stuff that needed to be resurfaced. The second grouping, and no engineering was included in the, or allowed to, is covered by the grant. And it's an 80-20 grant. Then the second grouping, which is the one that's due June 3rd, that could be more elaborate. That could include engineering, that could include reconstruction, sidewalks, utilities. Those projects could be that, but that first one that was due in April could not.
So fiscal year 2022, South Highland, Sunset, and Autumn. Then you're telling me, Diane, that we are not going to have any discussion on widening or sidewalks or paved shoulder.
Correct. If awarded, that grant was just to replace and redo what was there to bring the pavement up to the higher standards.
Chinese is not open on Tuesday.
Dan,
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay. The second solicitation is the one, and I want to stress too that this is only available right now. For one thing, it's a new program. They never covered local roads before. It was only collectors and hire for functional classification. So this is the first time this has been available, and an enormous amount of money has been pumped into it from the transportation bill. And this is a solicitation for all 4 years of funding. You apply now for the next 4 years, and these can be the more elaborate projects. So
But what if we wanted, Diane, what if we wanted South Highland with Nicolay Bank on there, connecting to the bike path? Why would Parks have not wanted to have a conversation about that?
Denise, we take 80% now and then we can do it ourselves later. Otherwise you miss out on the 80%.
Correct. This was to get 80. You can do that stuff later. It's just for this grant project, because they have to have the road project done in their fiscal year 2022. So the village can take the 80% to get the road redone as it is. And if you want to add, widen, do whatever you want, you can do it separate from the state.
But we
But
can
it was
still
to
do it all in one project.
No, because the state lets all of these projects, if you don't want to do it, then if the state decides that they're going to grant the village the money, you turn it down. We had to act on this because there was a deadline of April 1, and the local program and all of the information on it came out mid-March. So it was either apply and get 80%, and if you don't want it, turn it down, or completely don't get it the option of getting 80% funding. Which I believe, Dan, for 2022, those 3 roads is about $860,000. Is that correct? Of the federal share is what would get.
Yes, that's
if awarded.
If awarded, yes. But I wouldn't spend too much time discussing it. There are 125 applicants. About 10% of those are going to be awarded. So the DOT I called inquiring, making sure my application was complete. And he said you can resubmit those projects going forward next year. Because they did not, there was very minimal amount of funding for 2022.
But when he said next year, he means as in for June 3rd. So
Correct,
my concern
correct,
is if
correct.
if this gets pushed off on what is going to be put in for an application, which roads, until the May meeting, then that gives Dan about 2 weeks to complete a lot of 5 years worth of grant applications in 2 weeks.
I appreciate the tightness of that timeline, but the bottom line is we have a structure that, brings things up through committee. We had a prior Parks Committee meeting where a ranked priority roads to be worked on in the future was referenced and discussed, where as chair of the committee, I made it a point during Dan Klansky's committee report from staff to say we looked forward at a future parks meeting to hearing from Dan on his priorities for road repair. And that we've not had that. And now we're at 2023 through 2026. And Dan is saying, well, no, there's the list. And there's time to assess that list at parks and then further it on to the May board meeting.
Let's just have another board meeting the day after parks. We spend the whole time at parks on the 2nd of May, figuring this out. Come to the board the next night just for this, nothing else added, because this is too big of an opportunity for us to screw up. I've been bitching about roads forever. And we spend so much time in parks talking about flowers, way more than roads. Let's just do this. Let's not put him under pressure and have it be a holiday week. And then, this is a big deal. Like, I don't want to shortchange this. I want him to have as much time as possible and to make as many calls as possible as he needs to, as he's referencing this. There's obviously a lot of quotes and prices and communication he has to have. This is a big deal. Like, why? Okay. Let's bend a little bit.
Okay, Denise?
I was just going to say, this is exactly the thing that was brought up earlier by Nate and Chad, that if you're applying for grants, it needs to go through committee and the process. Correct? Does not the same argument apply here?
Let's go May 2nd. We have a committee. Let's have a special board meeting the next night, because this is really important. And that gives them a month instead of a week and a half with a holiday mixed in.
Okay, so can we have a quick check of calendars for May 3rd?
It depends on the time.
Somebody, Chad, do you want to make a motion then that we?
Yeah, if that's
we handle this agenda item with a motion for a special board meeting on the night of Tuesday, May 3rd for this roads 2022 through 2026 topic.
Yeah, I will be there. I'm on a plane at 6:30 at night. And if we can do it a little earlier in the evening, I can make it quickly for this discussion. Otherwise, I'll be out.
Okay.
Well, feel free to chime in. We'll be in.
Well, that still leaves us with a quorum if no one else has a problem.
I'm good.
I could do 6 that night.
Okay.
6.
Okay. So I would, do you want me to take a crack at phrasing that motion for you, Chad?
Or do you have to make a motion? I think we can table it.
I think that Denise has got her hand up, and then I wanted to say something.
Denise?
So then the other question that I had on page 47, the last sentence of the background, Transportation Alternatives Program, TAP. Wisconsin DOT advertised 2 solicitations for applications to funding programs. A third solicitation is anticipated in August and is limited to TAP, which the Transportation and Outdoor Rec Committee, and how, and are we going to be addressing that third solicitation for any bike lanes, trails, anything of that nature? Is that on our agenda for August?
For May, I've got to get the description of the committee back and the makeup of the committee. Rob communicated that to me last week, so I would anticipate having something there by August. That'd be the first, I think that's the first deadline we'd really hit.
So is that something that you have looked into, Diane? Is the
Not
TAP?
at this point, because no details have been provided other than that DOT has said it's coming. So we have nothing other than that. I know the TAP program that exactly, you know, it is that big, the trails, that's a big part of it. I know that they're typically extremely competitive, although now with this infusion of money into it, I think this would be a great time to discuss and be prepared. But we have no information at this point other than that DOT has said it's coming. We do know that, you know, there's been several other infrastructure or this bill related programs and COVID related funding that we've been told that something is coming and then it comes months later and then it has a very short window. So I think it would be a great idea to have the village, you know, your committees meet and discuss it about a potential application so that, you know, some of these turnarounds are, you know, 3 weeks where you have quite a bit of work to do. So I think that would be good to have some consensus on if, when the program is open, if the village is going to apply and for what.
All right, so we'll put that on Nate's plate in his committee. Is that appropriate, Nate?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess the other thing that I wanted to say is I understand why we're going for this funding, but I feel like we're doing the same thing again and again, where we're trying to rush to get to fund to do a project where that's going to have long-term repercussions. And I appreciate your solution, Chad, of having this go through channels and have this planning in place to have that special meeting. I think it's warranted. And that's a really good solution to it. So thank you, Chad.
Well, thank you guys for being open to it. I think we've been talking about this in a roundabout way for a long time, but this is exactly what we want Diane and Dan to be doing for us, is finding these, and maybe the timing isn't convenient, but there's no excuse. We don't have plans in place. We spend a lot of time at these subcommittees talking about a lot of things, so there's no reason we can't just power through and get, if we get 80% of our roads, like, are you kidding me? Like, this is what we've been begging for. So thank you. And even if it's inconvenient for us, keep bringing it to us.
Okay, so I will motion that we take the road repair opportunities as discussed in agenda item 5 and return to them as a single agenda item for the special board meeting at 6 p.m. on May 3rd.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 6, discussion regarding the recommendation from the Plan Commission and the Green Tier Legacy Community Committee that the village board authorize the creation of a revised raising and demolition permit application that contains all the information that is delineated in 14.15B19 of the Municipal Code, as well as historical relevance data and the potential for salvageable material reuse and building donation. Consider a motion for action if appropriate. Diane? You're on mute, Diane.
I was asked to look into this in the specific items that my understanding was that the Plan Commission and the Green Tier had asked for was regarding for raising and demo permits to make sure that there's some stipulation in there for the items listed on page 51 of the packet, which is hazardous materials, historical relevance, tree removal, salvageable material reuse, and building donation. And I reviewed chapter 14.15 of the ordinance.
Ask Tom if he likes that. I guess you can.
Who needs to mute their? Sorry,
And
Diane.
section, yep, all right. And section 14.15 of the Village Code of Ordinances, which is specific to raising and demolition, does require or addresses each of those items. But what I have found is that the permitting process does not. So there's no new ordinance that needs to be created. It's that the village needs to follow the ordinance and modify the permit application to meet the requirements of the permit application that are specifically identified in the Code of Ordinances. So ultimately, it's not a lack of ordinance or regulation on that. It's a lack of enforcement, and the application process does not match the zoning, or excuse me, the Code of Ordinances. So there needs to be a modification to the process of application, and then there needs to be a follow-up for enforcement, but not any change in code. It's all there.
So you will create the the permit or the application?
I can do that. I was reporting back to the board on what I found in reviewing this, because some of the issues I shouldn't say issues, but some of the items I just wanted to bring to your attention, because I'm before I created any kind of form, as like specifically item 2 on page 52 of the packet is regarding historical relevance, is the village has, according to your Code of Ordinances, that it has a historical commission, and that the Sister Bay Historic Preservation Committee is charged in the ordinance with creating, I can't remember what the, let's see. Anyways, my point on, and I have it further on there specifically what it says, I believe. But anyways, in talking to village staff, they were not aware that there was a historic preservation committee. And they were not aware of any indication that that committee met and did as it was charged to do in the Code of Ordinances, which begins, the part about historic preservation begins on page 56. So before I move forward with that, I wanted to check in with the board on, is this ordinance followed? Is there a historic preservation committee? Because if we're going to include this requirement in the application, then we need to be following the ordinance.
We do not have a committee. Or we have the Sister Bay Historical Society, but they have not been asked or to play out this role.
Right, nor would it normally be. That's a unique role here. So that's why I wanted to bring this forward before I did any further work, because I felt like the village board needed to review this chapter 26 within your ordinances and decide if you want to, if you wanted to work on historic preservation, then this is how you do it. So you need to decide as a village if you want to do this. And if not, then we need to proceed with that first. And if you don't want to do it, then we need to rescind this ordinance, because it is from what I could see, it's in your Code of Ordinances.
Well, is it possible that the Plan Commission could play that role or not?
I'd
Randy,
have to look further.
Randy, you're muted, but please.
There's going to be a whole process laid out as far as selection of committee members, how many members serve, what their functions are, and all of these things that are really, we'd have to do an ordinance change to have the Plan Commission function in that capacity, Denise. But, the reality is the village hasn't used that structure for some time. And having not appointed a committee effectively temporarily abandons that. There are no requirements to comply with if there's no committee there. And so it really just sits dormant until it's used. And I guess I'd leave for the time being pending a later determination as to whether you want to implement that and start using it rather than abandoning the whole thing at this point permanently and then having to start over later.
So then we would have to give some inclination on if we wanted to have this commission, have it be a new committee set up in the village's bylaws, determine what that committee structure or commission structure is, and appoint people to it appropriately as we move forward.
Well, those matters are likely all set up, and I haven't looked at that in some time, but all those issues are likely set up already. The question is whether you'd want to change any of those going forward if you want to start using that. But a Historic Preservation Commission can have a lot of power, and some good and some bad, because it can get down to telling people what kind of windows they can use to what kind of roofs are suitable for their houses and what kind of siding is suitable for their house, some of which are not real popular with the public. I mean, when you tell them you have to do this, here's your two choices.
What you may want to do, just a thought, is because the only reason why this historic preservation ordinance came up is because I was, as part of that green tier committee in the planning commission, is that they, as part of the raising and demo permit process, they wanted this consideration about historic preservation. So circling back to the raising and demo permit, since this brought up kind of another beast here with the historic preservation, is we could for now separate them out, meaning continue forward with the raising and demo permit process, update it to reflect what's in the ordinance regarding raising and demo, and take out for now the historic preservation part of what the committees requested, and address it later, because you want to move forward with that raising and demo permit process to update it. Take out the historic preservation, address everything else, and then come back and start further discussing historic preservation. First, do you want the ordinance? Do you want to move forward with that? And then if the answer is yes to that, then we can add it back into the raising and demo permit application.
So that is your suggestion.
That might, yes, and given the circumstances, because I wasn't 100% sure on if this historic preservation was dormant or not, that would be my recommendation, because I feel like it is very important that the village follow your ordinances as far as the raising and demo permit process, to follow that ordinance. And to do that, we need to modify the application to include all of the components that are required in the ordinance.
Okay, excellent.
And just put historic preservation aside for now, and whatever committee that needs to go to, or however you need to address that, on a separate agenda item of being, what do we do about historic preservation? After that's sorted out, you can add it back into the raising and demo permit process.
So would it be then the general consensus that historic preservation in the Code of Ordinances should be reviewed by the Plan Commission and make a recommendation to the board on what the current wording is, and if there's anything that we want changed? Is that appropriate, or is it just board
I
level?
think that's very appropriate, and that that separating away the historic preservation, we have consensus that Diane move forward with a redesign of the zoning and raising permit application, as she noted.
Okay, now, because she's going to redesign or add to the application, and it's referencing code that's currently there, is this just an administrative thing, issue that she and staff will just take care of, or do we need to approve the actual form?
I think it would go to the Plan Commission after Diane, with or without staff, have revised the form that it should go to Plan Commission for approval. Or Randy, would it be sufficient for the interim administrator and staff to just revise the form as detailed tonight and without Plan Commission approving it?
No, ultimately, I think it should be subject to board approval because you want to make sure that everybody on the board knows what's being approved.
Okay.
Right. I don't think it's a plan commission issue either, because it's already in the code. It just hasn't been utilized. So would this be something that could be on our May agenda, Diane, the board agenda?
I got two things. One, just quickly, is I guess I'm a little, I don't understand the need to approve the form because the board and the governing body is the one that that makes policy, and the policy is the ordinance. And all I'm doing by creating a form is implementing the ordinance. So I guess my thought would be for a report to the board, but I'm a little taken aback by the idea of getting approval of a form, because then it's just you doing what the ordinance that's already passed says. There's no policy there. The policy is in the ordinance. So to me, it just seems administrative. So I'm trying to wrap my brain around that.
Yeah, that's what I had said, that it's just an administrative thing because the code is already there.
That's how I see it. I don't know if I'll be able to get to it by the May agenda. I might need a little more time. But let me look into it a little bit more, and if I could get back to you. And I apologize, I do need to leave because I do have a 7:30 meeting that I need to be in person.
Okay. And how about we just say, Diane, if you can get to that by the June board meeting, that's fine. June 21st.
That would be perfect. I appreciate the extra time. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you very much.
So,
All right,
so now what is, okay, never mind.
So we have no motion for action. And as discussed, as noted earlier, we're moving up the closed session to begin shortly, considering that it has been clarified with board consensus earlier in the evening that Diane's letter that was read as correspondence was simply correspondence with no further discussion in any forum tonight. Diane has left off the call, and in that regard, Randy, we thank you for being with us up to this point this evening, and we can let you go as well. Denise?
Well,
Or do you see need for Randy to come in for closed?
well, with Diane leaving and for her to tell us specifically what that letter meant, I guess Randy did say it is a personnel issue. We should talk about it in closed session, and now Diane is gone. So
I don't view this as a personnel. I view this as board conduct with staff. And this isn't a secret. This is something we should talk about in public. It should be an agenda item for next month. That letter, in my opinion, this isn't, we're not talking about somebody's performance. We're not talking about their salary. We're not talking about the couple things listed in here: employee promotions, compensation, performance, evaluation.
We don't know that we're not talking about someone's performance.
I have very specific performance issues to
Yeah,
discuss.
and so I agree that it's
we can talk about performance things because that's under the agenda. But as far as how the board is interacting with staff, this shouldn't be in private. I want staff to be in this. I want staff to talk. I want to hear. This is us doing our job.
In the past year, what you're referencing in general has gone through personnel committee when things.
I don't care where it's gone. This is where it needs to come now.
Well, we've always, committees always report up to the board.
I don't give a shit about what committees do. This is about how the board is interacting with staff. That's a board issue. That's not a personnel issue. That's a board issue.
So Denise has had her hand up.
Denise?
Well, I want to hear what Randy's opinion is.
It's certainly a mixed issue, but there are personnel components because obviously from what your administrator's telling you in her letter, there's issues affecting personnel and how they are supposed to do their jobs. And I think there needs to be a discussion on whether they're able to properly do their jobs based on how the board is instructing them. And, you know, that's going to certainly involve the capabilities of the staff, as well as what the feedback is and the direction given to them. So it's really an issue that should be discussed in closed session from that standpoint, because that involves personnel, and it would really limit the board in its ability to try to resolve this if you can't discuss those matters in full.
Okay, if that's how we discuss it, then I feel like it needs to be an inclusive meeting with all staff. Right? We're not going to solve anything with the board talking about this in closed.
I guess we don't know everything
We don't know what we're talking about.
We don't know what's going on in this closed. And as much as I think it was appropriate to read that letter in open, because I don't think that it was part of closed necessarily, I do think that we should go into closed and as what Randy's saying, because it could and only discuss the staff issues. I think that would
when Diane is present, because she is the one that has written the letter and left the questioning. So this is a letter that came from Diane. Diane does not have time to participate further this evening. We can table this for closed session at next month's meeting when Diane can be present.
Well, I thought Denise said she had some performance issues she wanted to discuss tonight. Or are you saying you don't want to do that, Denise, until Diane's here?
There's various, you know.
Rob, I was asking Denise that.
Okay.
I guess I need to hear from Diane because her letter to me was extremely vague. I need to know specifically what the issues are, and if Diane can't participate in telling us what that is, I wanted to hear that first, then have a conversation with board only on the things that I am aware of that some of you other board members may not be aware of, which involves staff.
Does it make sense to have that board only conversation tonight, or that should only happen after you have this other discussion, in your opinion?
I could certainly give you some background information if you wanted to do it tonight. If you want to postpone the whole thing until next month, that's okay too.
I don't think it's appropriate for us to discuss this letter tonight. This was correspondence given to us. I believe it should be read to the public, so I did. It's nothing we had intended to talk about. At least I don't think it was. It came today. It wasn't part. This agenda wasn't with its intent. I don't think we should talk about it tonight. And you know, I still.
So then, to my point, you don't object to us having it as a closed session topic for the next month's board meeting, at which point Diane, who wrote the letter, could be invited.
I think, yeah, all staff should be invited that wants to participate.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but are you in agreement that we can,
Sure.
next month, closed session, Diane is there, and then we can determine who else needs to be there?
Well, I don't think we should pick and, I don't think we should pick and choose. I think any staff that wants to be there should be there.
I am not going to talk about staff in front of staff.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at 20, the closed session, and it does already mention a personnel matter that would have been on there before this letter received. So if there's something else, I mean, maybe we just, if nothing else, we just let this go down to 20 and we don't worry about expediting it.
I'm not, I didn't follow you, Nate. Are you supporting that it be talked about tonight?
I'm not saying we should talk about the letter, but I'm saying we've got closed session at number 20. We amended our agenda.
Well, there's various personnel matters not pertaining to Diane's letter.
So if there's other items, we should go into close now. If there's other items that were already on the agenda, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
But
well,
you
we
say-
are going,
Nate is saying that we can do it at the end of the meeting.
But unless we've already amended our agenda, and then we might need to do it now because we amended our agenda.
That's my
Randy,
understanding.
We do
because
have the Randy, we do have the authority to vary from the agenda. Does it not say that right on the agenda?
You do, and you could take up a new amendment to the agenda to place that at the end.
Okay, so I will motion.
Real
that-
quick, Denise, you need to clarify something. If staff is having an issue with how we're dealing with them, you don't want them in the meeting? What the fuck?
Hey,
Where's my language?
Chad, you're out of order. There's nothing in the municipal guidebook for how villages board should operate that includes using that language. Period. You're
Denise,
out of
please answer
order.
that.
You're out of order, and we're gonna move on. We will deal with this in closed session at a future month's meeting, the topic of Diane's letter. As far as the rest of the personnel matters that are different, I will motion that we amend the agenda so that it returns to point 20.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So we will not be addressing any of that Diane letter topic. Randy, thank you and appreciate your participation this evening. And we will move along to item number 7 on the agenda, discussion regarding the recommendation from the Plan Commission that the village board approve the draft of the development agreement between representatives of Mosaic Development LLC and the Village of Sister Bay for the Shoals, the multifamily attainable housing development that will be constructed on parcel number 1810008312824G2, which is located in the Stony Ridge development and had originally been a part of parcel number 181510002A, as well as discussion regarding the DOT's requirements with respect to dedication of a portion of parcel number 1810008312824G2 for the right-of-way for the Cherrywood Lane Extension Project and the desire of representatives of Mosaic Development to accomplish that dedication as soon as possible. Consider motions for action if appropriate. Denise,
Yes, Rob.
anything that you would like to convey or add? Or
No,
do you have a
sir.
motion ready?
I have nothing to convey.
Okay. Do we have any questions or discussion related to packet material on this?
I have nothing.
Not, I will motion that we approve the recommendation from the Plan Commission as noted in the packet pertaining to the shoals.
This is,
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay,
Item
there is one issue that should be addressed that was on the agenda. It's the discussion regarding the DOT's requirements with respect to dedication of a portion of those parcel G2 for the right of way for the Cherrywood Lane extension. Marissa is on here and she can explain the reasoning, but she would like to proceed with dedication of that right of way as soon as possible. Randy had said that the description that was provided by Marissa's attorney, as well as the map that was attached to that, is correct. So I talked to the people in the Land Use Services office, and they said that since we're a village, there's no need to actually do a revised CSM, which would be like another 3-month process. So you would just have to put on your agenda for the next meeting that you want to pass and adopt a related resolution and either ask Randy to draft the quitclaim deed or ask Marissa's attorney to draft the quitclaim deed and get that recorded as soon as possible.
Marissa?
Decide if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I guess one thing that we had hoped could happen tonight was that the village board could approve the accepting of that description. And then based on that approval, we can draft the quick claim, or Randy, if Attorney Nesbitt wants to do that, he can do that. And then we can record that after this approval. Because if we wait until the next village board meeting, we're hoping to close prior to that.
Janelle, I believe that was in the pack. I can't find the exact page, but I believe that was noted in the packet, was it not?
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
Okay, so regarding the motion and the second and the vote on the recommendation regarding everything on item number 7 in the packet, you're saying we need a separate motion specifically for this? Okay, so I
we need a
will,
motion to approve that.
see, I guess this is why I'm confused, because for the last month, I've been talking to everybody about how to get this on this agenda to make sure we can keep moving with that legal description as presented. And that's why we did it that way. And we asked if we needed a quitclaim to be presented today, and the answer was no.
But see, Marissa, what they would do, they would make a motion that they accept that and pass and adopt a resolution to accept it. Then you would get the quitclaim deed done. I would draft a resolution and that would be the end of it.
But we have to wait to record it until the next meeting is the problem.
No, you don't.
Okay.
If they make a motion to pass and adopt a resolution tonight
Okay.
to accept that easement, it'll be part of the motion that that the quitclaim deed shall be drafted and recorded as soon as possible, and then that's the end of it.
Okay, so that can happen.
Right now.
it can happen right now. Janelle, would you be so kind as to phrase that motion for us?
Okay, that the village board passes and adopts a resolution that accepts, let's see, the dedication of a portion of parcel number 1810008312824G2 for the right-of-way for the Cherrywood Lane Extension Project as presented. And so then now you just have to say who's going to be responsible for drafting the quitclaim deed. So do you want Marissa's attorney to do it, or do you want Randy to do it?
It's no problem for us to do it.
Let's have Marissa's attorney present it.
Okay. So then it would just be, and the attorney for Mosaic Developments shall see that the related quitclaim deed is recorded and provided to the village clerk for recording as soon as possible. Then when you get it done, it'll come, you'd sign it, have it notarized, then bring it in, and then Rob will sign it, and then Heidi can record it.
Phew, okay.
Marissa, do we need to have Janelle repeat that for clarification, or board members, or are we good to go with the motion as Janelle enunciated?
Good to go.
Okay, so I will make that motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Marissa, thank you.
Great, thanks, guys.
That brings us to a close on item 7. Item 8, discussion regarding a notification that was received from Benjamin Ellers, agent for Chop Restaurants LLC, DBA Pastavino, that he wishes to surrender the Class B beer and Class C wine license for the property located at 10571 Country Walk Lane, Unit 25, which is currently valid until June 30th, 2022, effective immediately. Consider a motion for action if appropriate. Heidi?
So I wrote a report which was included in your packet. Hopefully it was clear. The new owners of Pastavino cannot move forward with applying for a liquor license until the current license is surrendered. Can't have 2 licenses for the same property. So it's a pretty straightforward request. The restaurant has not been open at all this year, and it sold in February.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion on a request from Steamboat Missy LLC, DVA Pastavino, Amanda Orlock agent, for the issuance of a Class B beer and Class C wine license for the property located at 10571 Country Walk Lane, Unit 25, for the period ending June 30th, 2022. Consider a motion for action if appropriate.
So the Orlocks have purchased Postavino. They're going to operate it as Postavino. They are not making any substantial changes, just a coat of paint on the walls. They'd like to open fairly soon and are requesting a beer and wine license, which Postavino has had in the past.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 10, discussion regarding the recommendation from the Plan Commission that the village board pass and adopt resolution number 484-041-92022 that approves the certified survey maps, CSMs, that will reconfigure parcel number 18100-073-12811A6, parcel number 18100-073-12811A7, and parcel number 18100-073-12811G, which are owned by F&D Christ Family Limited Partnership in such fashion that 6 individual lots are created. Consider a motion for action if appropriate. Denise, is there anything you would like to add or clarify to packet materials here?
No, unless anybody has a question.
Just, are those going to be commercial lots adjacent to the parking lot? Is that how that's orientated? I'm trying to,
Yeah.
is that the intent, or is that?
They are, we do not know, Plan Commission is not aware of what the intent is. By reconfiguring these lots, they still stay within the zoning that they currently were. They have not asked for any rezoning to be done.
And they're the appropriate size for that district?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
I will motion that we accept the Plan Commission's recommendation accordingly.
Second.
Second from Nate Bell. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 11, discussion regarding the recommendation from the Fire Board that an engine be purchased from Marion Body Works Incorporated to replace engine 8. Consider a motion for action if appropriate. Page 128, 129 in the packet. Tasha?
Okay. So it's my recommendation, since the fire board is recommending we purchase this engine from Marion Body Works, that we reallocate funding in the capital reserves fund from our building and facilities fund to pay for this fire truck. We would approve the purchase of the replacement for engine 8 from Marion Body Works. The 2022 budget has an expenditure of approximately has an allocation of approximately $158,334 for weight room and hose 25 refurbishment. Neither of those projects are moving forward. There's also neither of those items are moving forward this year. Approximately $230,000 is available for fire department capital needs. So we're looking for another $174,327. We have a couple of options here because we do not have to pay for this truck up front. We could levy for this in 2023 and 2024. That would be a pretty excessive levy compared to what we've done in the past. We could supplement the purchase with funds from the Pratt. This would be a qualifying infrastructure Pratt purchase. But that would take away from our roads funding. So that we can reallocate the existing funding. We currently have $649,000 in the reserve toward building facilities. So that's where that would come from. We could also take out debt for this payment. While debt costs are low, I don't think that that's the best idea. This is a very small sum to get a loan for, which then means you pay more in interest. And when we have funding available, why would we take out debt when funds are actually available? So there is also, and I guess I should defer to Chris on this part of it, but there is also a possibility if we pay upfront of receiving a small discount. We have had that in the past. I don't know if that's a possibility here. And just to be clear on the overall fire department capital needs, this will have a significant impact on our budget going forward in order to catch up with these really fairly sizable purchases. we would have to allocate a large portion of our capital funding or more capital funding from our budget toward the fire department. So we are either looking at some additional reallocation in the future, debt in the future, or some really creative options and funding sources. So with all that said, my recommendation is to move funds within the capital fund from building and facilities to the fire department to pay for this engine tonight. Then in the future, hopefully we can get grant or congressionally directed spending for this item. If we cannot, at least we're able to pay for it. And then we continue to look for other funding options in the future and continue to get creative. And if we can get other funding options for other projects, that frees up other capital items, other capital to put towards the fire department.
I agree, Tasha. Option number 3 makes the most sense to me. I'd also just reference along with that in further support of it, we heard earlier in the evening about a potential grant that's been determined in the atmosphere of grants for an administration building. This could wind up becoming something where we're not even reallocating funding, but that you know, it's freed up funding because we might get a grant for the administration building as well. So I would support option number 3. Denise?
I am concerned. I don't disagree with Tasha's recommendation. I am concerned about what the future looks like for funding our road projects and other projects and a new administration building, and how this engine number 8 coming to the top of the list and quickly and in 2 years having another major purchase. I'm just venting, and I am concerned on where we are going to be financially. Yes, we're putting a lot of faith in grants that we may or may not get or direct funding. But I just felt I needed to say that out loud.
I think your concern is valid.
I would like to add, as a fire board member, before the chief weighs in, I was very impressed with and grateful for the due diligence that the chief and his team did on the potential for acquiring this Engine 8 through Marion. They were researched extensively with prior customers who all have attested to the fine quality and satisfaction with the products from Marion. The fire board was unanimously comfortable with them, and glad that we had a lower offer from them. With that, I'll turn it over to Chief for anything else you'd like to say.
Well, first, thank you for your time and your consideration on this potential purchase. And Denise is absolutely right. The costs are astronomical. Unfortunately, the costs are going to continue to grow. Since we started this project and started working with our consultant, again, for those of you new to the board, the Fire Commission hired a consultant to review our apparatus, how often we buy them, how long we keep them, how we buy them, and how we maintain them. As a fleet, we're getting close to trying to keep everything at about 30 years. This one will be replaced at about 25 years, and that's intentionally to separate this big purchase from the next really big purchase, which is about out 5 or 7 years, to try to give us some breathing room in there. But I'm just trying to be brutally honest. They are horribly expensive. They've gone up, they've gone up like 15% in the last 4 months or 6 months, and they're expected to go up another 5 or 6% in May or June. And when we're talking in dollars in excess of $1 million a copy, that starts to add up incredibly fast. You know, and we've continually tried to hold on to them longer. Many departments are on a 20-year rotation. We took ours to 25 for first out vehicles and 30 for support vehicles. And then we hired the consultant, and the math on that works out to about a truck every 2.7 years. The consultant came in, and we actually, his initial idea was, don't keep them as long, change them out more often. You know, because they're worth more when you get rid of them that way. But after he came here and saw our unique geography and the demographics that we play to, he said, no, you're doing the right thing. And he worked out a schedule where we're now, instead of 2.7 years, it's at 3 years between purchases. So we continue to try to spread that cost out. Unfortunately, the dollar value we gain by spreading it out is very, very quickly eaten up by the increase in cost, the inflationary costs on buying these things. And that's all I really have, other than to answer your questions if you have them.
Thank you, Chris.
Yep.
So I will make a motion that we accept Tasha's recommendation for option number 3, reallocating existing funding in the capital fund from buildings, facilities to the fire department.
Second.
Do we have a second? Second by Denise. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Tasha.
Do I need to stay on for anything else tonight? Any of you know? I didn't really look down the agenda.
You're good.
All right, thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Take
Chief.
care,
You
Chris.
too.
You.
Discussion, new business item number 12, appointment of a board member to take the required board of review training. Consider a motion for action if appropriate. Heidi, reading your information in the packet, it seems this is twofold, that a board member could either participate in one of the online courses, as you noted, or am I correct to say the alternate training video that the village has could be utilized?
Correct. Because of the timeline to sign up for those online courses, some of those dates that are in the board report are no longer even available to you. I did purchase the video, and it comes with a booklet, so you can do it on your own time. You would just have to complete the test and sign the affidavit, return it to me by the end of May.
Okay, do we have a video player at the village office anywhere or in one of the facilities?
It's actually a flash drive. You plug it into your computer.
Okay, and that can be done at any time between now and when, Heidi?
The end of May.
Okay, unless somebody on the board has a particular interest in doing this, I would volunteer to be the board member who undertakes the board of review training using the alternate training video method.
You want to be the victim, Rob? Go right ahead. That's a great video. I've watched it a couple times. Well,
I've seen one similar before. I remember how enchanting the experience was.
So Rob can do it this year and someone else can do it the following year because it is an annual requirement now.
Okay, so I will follow up with you on that, Heidi.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
You are most welcome. Item number 13, a discussion regarding the provisions of ordinance number 295 that amends various sections of Article 4, Chapter 18 of the Municipal Code that pertain to the required licenses for short-term rentals of residential dwellings in the village of Sister Bay. Consider a motion for action if appropriate. Denise?
So it was the original intent to deal with STRs in residential districts. And that's so that neighbors in that neighborhood would have someone to call and address if there were issues. Since last month, there was, I became aware of a property that sold within the village and the intention to turn it into a STR. It was currently workforce housing or year-round housing, I should say. The people were evicted from it. And when I became aware of that, it is in the B3 downtown district. And some of the inquiry of what they could do with the property had to do with remodeling and adding additional bedrooms so that the house could have more people in it. This particular parcel has one parking space. And so it became now an issue that our new STR ordinance would not have any control over where these people would be parking if there were multiple cars. So, and Heidi did find a couple of other glitches in the document after we had passed it last month. So that is why this is being presented to the board again, basically stating that no matter what zoning district the STR is in, it will require a permit so that we can make sure that parking is addressed appropriately and we don't have a bunch of people parking on the street and it must be on the property. Chad?
How does this current zoning address parking for that property? I would assume it's in a commercial district, like you said, B3 or B2. There must be something within code for that already for their parking. What does it say for that? It's probably more stringent than.
It's not, because it's a residential home, which is no longer allowed in the B3 district. That was zoned out. I can't remember exactly what year, if it was 2007 when that part of the code was rewritten. So it is a grandfathered property. Any single family home in the B2 or B3 is a grandfathered property. So it was, and because Heidi had found some other little typos in it and references that needed to be renumbered, I just thought it was appropriate to include this in it and see what the board thought if they wanted to amend that one little section.
I'm not completely against it, but I thought the intent was for the residential neighborhoods. If this is commercial activity in a commercial district, I just think maybe it should be addressed in a different fashion. If we don't have anything in our commercial district code that addresses this use of business activity, it's time to update it because it's a use and it's business activity. There's other homes that will be in this area that are grandfathered in. I thought, yeah, I mean, I get it for residential area, preserving residential neighborhoods, but if it's not in a neighborhood, I think it needs to fall on our business. And then we need to identify a vacation rental as a business in this district. And just like a restaurant has to have certain parking or a retail shop has to have certain parking, you know, so does a vacation rental.
I hear what you're saying, Chad, and I think that does make sense to me because it, like you say, the short term, the STR ordinance was business use in a residential district, and dealing with that, I think that you're right that this is a business use in a business district, and we should probably amend the B3 zoning. I do think that this is an issue we should deal with, though.
Yeah, I agree. It needs to be addressed. The code is outdated because of new activities.
And then I think that we should also look at whatever other districts that this possibly could happen in without making, I mean, like, but because it's not a permitted use, well, we could still put restrictions on it.
I mean, in theory, it's kind of like a bed and breakfast in a business district.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if it would fall with under that zoning requirements, but they're required parking. If they're going to be advertising guests, their parking should be a little more stringent than maybe in a, you know, if we would let a bread and breakfast come into a B3 district and only have one parking space, that shouldn't be allowed. I mean, I assume there's something in code for that, for parking requirements based on how many people are sleeping there.
I guess
These
there's
operate under a hotel permit, you know, like the state issues a hotel permit for these, basically. It's the same inspection, just a different box they check.
Denise is looking something up.
I'm waiting for anybody else to hear an opinion
Okay.
while I
And
look it up.
Okay.
Because when I went through the code, I really couldn't find where anything else, parking restrictions that we would have the authority under what's currently there, and to change the code most likely would take about 4 months to do, by amending the B3 zoning and amending the parking aspect of it also. It would again have to go to public hearing. Plan Commission would have to talk about it, determine wording, have a public hearing, recommend to the village board. So that would be the process, probably about 4 months.
My only pushback is the intent of this SDR, which I ultimately voted for. The intent was basically having a database for neighbors to be notified, you know, to be able to contact, to be notified. This just seems like this should be addressed in the code in the business district. This won't be the first or last time. But I guess ultimately.
Do you want to offer a motion to move it through the 4-month process, Chad?
No, I don't need to offer that motion. I feel like it can be voted on tonight. This, you know, whether it, you know, how everybody else feels. I'm not trying to be obstinate with it. I'm just voicing my opinion on it, and based on the intent of the STR and as it was sold to me.
I think that it would be ideal to do it through the zoning, but I think that I feel like Denise, those are some good points. I don't know if we really want this hanging out there for 4 months, so I'd be inclined to make the change through here. Understanding maybe it's not optimal, but it's certainly the same impact. So I'm okay with doing it this way, but I do hear your concerns, Chad. I just think this is something we should move on sooner than later, not go through 4 months.
I think part of the whole in the STR was getting a correlation for a parking space and people, right? Some people there'll be 10 people sleeping in a rental and there'll be 10 different cars. Some rentals will sleep 10 people and there'll be 2 cars. So how do you limit the parking spaces and people in that fashion? I don't know. The Door Hotel, I guarantee you every hotel that has just enough spots for their hotel often has people parking throughout the village and staying at that hotel. That's been going on for every urban hotel probably since the existence of cars and urban hotels. So I don't know how you line up cars with people is what I'm saying.
They have to have a parking plan. And so then when they rent out their place, they can say that there is 1 parking or 2 parking or 3 parking spaces available, no matter how many people you want to jam pack into each of those vehicles and pack into the home. It must be on premise parking, not off street. And that's why we got rid of the whole thing last month when you were questioning how do we determine the occupancy, because which was a very valid point. So we removed that, and it really just comes down to parking like it does for any other business.
Yeah, and I agree. They should have parking restrictions or requirements. I don't disagree at all. I'm just wondering if it shouldn't be done again, just as every other business in that district is done. But I would maybe before us temporarily requiring them to meet the parking of this until it is addressed or something of that nature. But I don't know how we can pick and choose what businesses are in different districts and not treat them with the same process, so to speak. That's all.
Well, because the code has, as we know, within the last 5 years or maybe longer, depending upon the area that any individual lives in, VRBO has just taken off. And I'm sure that Sister Bay's code has not kept up with a lot of the changes pertaining to that, hence the STR ordinances that people are trying to have, at least in Wisconsin, some kind of recourse with. I am not opposed to adopting the ordinance as it's presented tonight, and excuse me, working through identifying vacation rentals as a business and amending the code where appropriate with our new interim zoning administrator. And if we can get that done in the next year, and depending upon how that is all worded and what we can legally do, that we remove it when we change the code. I have no problem with that.
I'd be in support of that.
Okay, how are we gonna make sure that we do that though?
I will, well,
I'll put my faith in you, Chad, to remind us.
No, I don't want to have faith in any of us. I want to have a process involving staff who.
well, I don't know if I have the authority to ask staff to do anything.
I think we have the authority to ask staff. That's how it works. We
Okay.
completely have the authority to ask staff. We
Then we
collectively have the authority to ask staff. Us individually, a little different.
So then everybody needs to agree that we ask the new interim zoning administrator that when she gets through some other things, that she go through our code, create some wording to present to us to start the process.
Sounds good to me.
Do we have consensus?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you want me to word that? That the new interim zoning administrator shall draft regulations that pertain to parking for short-term rental units in the business districts? Is that right?
In anything outside of the residential districts.
Okay.
That we identify vacation rentals as a business and come up with criteria for parking regulations.
Okay.
So because we have consensus on that, Janelle, we do not need a motion and a second and a vote, correct?
Nope.
Well, you
Okay.
could make a motion to correct the typos in the ordinance if you'd like.
Sure.
We can take out the part about the zoning districts, but still.
No, I think the board is saying that they will still go along with that as
Oh.
long as that we work on changing the code.
They'll
Okay,
pass and adopt the ordinance on the condition kind of that the business districts will be revised ASAP.
okay, thank you.
So you would
Okay.
need a motion to pass and adopt your ordinance, Rob.
Okay. I will motion that we pass and adopt the ordinance with the additional commentary as noted.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 14, discussion regarding the recommendation from staff members that the village board authorize Dan Lundquist, the village's facilities manager, to begin identifying and doing research regarding potential projects that would qualify for regular and startup urban forestry grants, and work on drafting the related applications and required documentation so that all of that documentation can be submitted to Parks, Properties, and Streets Committee for review and approval, and the village board can consider passing and adopting an applicable resolution prior to the deadline for submission of those applications, which is October 1st, 2022. Consider a motion for action if appropriate. Dan, I believe, is Dan Lundquist still with us to?
Yep.
Okay, Danny, take it away.
Yeah, my department would like authorization from the board to apply for 2 grants. One's a regular urban forestry grant, and the other is a startup urban forestry grant. They're both 50-50 grants where the village would have to pay 100% down, and then we would get reimbursement for 50% of it for eligible costs. We could use these grants for tree pruning, tree planting, tree removal, staff training, and several other things that are listed on the board report. And if you give us the go-ahead, we will work on getting the application and documents and submit them at the July 19th board meeting.
Denise?
A long time ago, Miles Danhausen, gosh, it's got to be close to 15 years, if not longer, suggested that we plant street trees in the right of way of the highways or next to the bike path. Now, I don't know exactly where all the right of ways are, or if the bike path butts right up to the private property, and so there would be no room for that. But is that something, Dan, that you could look into and see if that's something possible on creating this street-lined corridor if we have the opportunity to plant trees in the right of way?
I have no idea.
I know, but could you look into that? I'm sure
Yes.
that there are a lot of other things that are much more important right now, but if this is an annual or biannual cost sharing, could it just be in your notes somewhere that once we start moving forward and things have been identified on what Parks plan would be to address some of these issues, that could be a conversation in the future?
Yes, we can check into it for sure.
Okay, thank you. So I had a couple of notes. So when we did our parks walk around and we had determined a few trees that we needed to be replaced, and certainly we need some more shade trees in Waterfront Park. And as you mentioned in here, that there are cedars that just are messy and ugly and old and should be replanted with hardwoods. Will you take some of the information from that parks walk around on what we talked about and incorporate that into your plan?
Sure.
Okay.
Can do that.
So then, Danny, you're saying, so which would it be when all of this would then be submitted to Parks at their Parks July meeting prior to the board July meeting? Is that correct?
I don't know if we have to do it to the Parks meeting or not, or we need
Well,
authorization.
it says
from
right
the
in
board
the,
meeting.
it says right in the description of this agenda item that all of this documentation will be submitted to the Parks, Property and Streets for review and approval. And then the village board can consider passing and adopting an applicable resolution. My understanding in talking with Janelle ahead of time was that for reasons that Janelle referenced, the specificity of these urban forestry grants go to the board first, and then, it would go back to parks rather than going up from parks to the board. Janelle, am I paraphrasing that conversation of ours correctly?
Yeah, that's typically how it's done, where, because you guys are authorizing the submission
Right.
of this documentation, kind of like Diane did tonight.
Right. So what's before us is we're authorizing Dan to put all this together, and then it would seem that it would go to the July parks for review and approval, and then come back to the board at the July meeting saying, okay, parks is signed off on this.
It would make the most sense to do
Right.
it that way.
Right. So that's what we're talking about this evening. And considering that, I would motion that we allow Dan Lundquist as village facilities manager to move forward in preparing all the said documentation for a next step of submission to the Parks Committee at the July meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks.
Item number 15, discussion regarding the recommendation from Chad Kanonko, the chair of the village's ad hoc Pebble Beach Committee, that the ad hoc Pebble Beach Committee be dissolved and that a Friends of Pebble Beach group be created. Consider a motion for action as appropriate. Before I turn this over to Chad to further illuminate the request, I would just add, for the edification of Mary and Don, what we're talking about here is a similar process that we went through recently with the ad hoc ice rink committee that got to a particular point when the chair of that committee, Miles Danhausen, viewed it best to convert it to a Friends of the ice rink. I'll let Chad speak to this more in detail, but essentially at a high level, two of the issues at hand behind Chad's request, similar to when Miles requested the same, is that as a topic of this type moves forward, it's difficult to proceed for somebody in charge as the chair with walking quorum type situations that could possibly develop, and also turning it from an ad hoc committee to a Friends group allows that person who's chairing it to have much more liberty and freedom in terms of pursuing funding opportunities in part. With that said, we would want Chad to retain this group and for him to serve as the chair of the group and for it to continue to report up to Parks. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chad for anything further.
Yeah, it's basically, we're at the point where we just need to really just meet informally, type up copy for a website, start talking about different marketing initiatives. A lot of it's kind of fluid and on the fly, and the meeting process and getting people together, having it in a formal building with the village, having village staff have to come to this. Meanwhile, it's just an ad hoc committee. It's not like anything we get to say is binding. I think the Friends group is what the ultimate goal was, and I've just learned that it really needs to be sooner than later, and I probably should ask for this a couple months ago, but that's it. Nothing will change. It'll still report to Parks. We're going to try to increase people getting into it, but for us just to work together, these are what, as I've been enlightened about all the things that we're doing right and wrong, me working with two other guys and sending an email and getting copy back and forth in another, that's a walking quorum, and that's not right. So we just got to get out of that format.
I would make a motion that we dissolve the village's ad hoc Pebble Beach Committee, that we create a Friends of Pebble Beach group, and that we put Chad as the chair of that group to lead the reporting back to Parks.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Item number 16, appointment of Village of Sister Bay Committee chairpersons by village president. I'm going to designate several new committee chairs, in part mainly filling vacancies that are created with Pat's departure. Regarding the Marina Committee, I'm designating Scott Baker to take over as the Marina Committee Chair. Regarding Personnel Committee, I'm designating that I will take that over as Chair. Regarding the Land Acquisition Committee, I'm designating Nate Bell to take that over. This is my opinion on the land acquisition, as I discussed with Chad previously, is, in my opinion, outdoor recreation and transportation that Nate will be spearheading as the leader of that committee is eventually going to, if not merge, certainly work in unison with the Land Acquisition Committee. In part, considering the fact, Mary and Don, for your edification in particular, as Heidi has noted at previous meetings, a lot of the citizen feedback that has come into the village office about the Wiltsey property is related to recreation opportunities. There's going to be, yeah.
I don't know if putting Nate as the chair of a committee he hasn't been to a meeting at when we haven't really finished our preliminary work makes sense. I already kind of voiced that to you. We already have a meeting on the books again, and I don't know how putting a chair that hasn't been through any of this is fair to him, fair to this group. I understand. I think it's moving in the direction towards Nate's committee. I think we're going to give a recommendation, and I think we're going to kind of be in the background. But as things go on with this property, I think there's still going to be a need, a committee that's going to have to be involved, because recreation and trails is just a part of that. I don't think that makes sense.
I understand your position. As you know, you've expressed it to me before. I will illuminate for the rest of the board, considering your stance, what I'm basing my designation on in the best interests of the village. And that is, in particular, what you said about Nate not chairing a type of this committee or et cetera before is true. However, Nate has showcased his abilities on other committees.
I'm not questioning his capabilities. He's very capable.
I guess, hold on here.
Don't, all right. So Nate has gone on record in public forum as stating that he plans to run for president in April 2023, which at this point, unless somebody else steps forward, would be a ballot vacancy that will either have Nate as the sole candidate on the ballot or Nate and somebody else from the community who steps forward. As the board is aware, from the time I took the position over, I stated I could commit to it for 2 years, and I've reiterated that on numerous occasions. Considering the fact of Nate's skill set and considering the fact that Nate expressed to the public his willingness to serve in a greater capacity by running for the county board, now that he will not be devoting time to that based on the election results, he certainly has time to devote where it's needed for the village of Sister Bay. So I am wholeheartedly willing to let the two of you work on transition as you see fit. And certainly, Chad, you can be as involved as you want to be in that transition to ultimately Nate taking that committee over.
I don't want to be the committee chair at this point. I mean, I want to be part of that committee so I can get on board for it. But I think that Chad makes a very valid point that you don't want to walk into something and run something you haven't been involved in. I would like to catch up to speed, and then maybe 6 months from now we can revisit this or something along those lines. I think that'd be far more appropriate. I appreciate your vote of confidence, Rob, but I think that there's something to be said for continuity. And at some point that may work out, but I think that it makes sense for this committee to keep going with it is this existing chair for at least for the short term at minimum.
Okay, short term at minimum to me is transition time, bringing you up to speed. Denise?
What about co-chairs to solve the problem?
I would not be. I would not be.
It
I
just
would
makes
not be
sense.
adverse to that. So how does that sit with the two of you?
Me and Nate will work together marvelously. Nate, we got a meeting here on May 2nd. We're doing a 2-hour meeting at noon before Parks. It's gonna be a fun day. It's probably not gonna work for you. We have to work around Dickie Burris's bus schedule. And he's been very instrumental.
We can get into that during the committee reports too more.
These are things that you got to consider before you appoint a chair who can't.
Chad, it's up to the village president to designate committee chairs. I am allowing the existence of co-chairs. Okay.
Thank you for allowing it. Appreciate
it.
Very gracious of you.
So
very gracious.
No. So we will move forward officially with the two of you co-chairing that committee. Item number 17, discussion regarding and confirmation of the village president's recommended committee and commission appointments. Consider a motion for action as appropriate. Unlike
Bob,
yes,
I think you need a motion to accept your recommendations.
not according to what I've been told by Dave Leno and prior presidents. It's a designation made by the village president.
Okay, so you're just gonna designate it then? Okay,
Designate new committee chairs. They're designated
okay.
as noted. Okay, regarding recommendations for the board to consider for approval for trustee and citizen committee appointments. I am recommending to the board that we install Chad as a member of the personnel committee in the trustee vacancy. I'm recommending to the board that we add Mary Lyons to the trustee appointments for the Door County Economic Development Committee, the Library Commission, and Coastal Byways. I'm recommending to the board that we appoint Don Cox to the trustee positions for Marina Committee, Finance Committee, Communication and Technology. I will note to the board, I've discussed those various options and appointment recommendations with Chad, Mary, and Don. I'm also recommending to the board that we appoint Scott Baker to the trustee openings on the fire board and the utilities, returning to committees he served on previously. As I've discussed with Scott, I'm recommending that I fill the trustee vacancy on the Marina Fest committee. And I'm recommending to the board that I'm recommending one citizen appointment this evening, and that is Pat Duffy to the Marina Committee as the citizen alternate.
Rob, I think with Don Cox, I missed a committee. You said appointing him to Finance, Communication and Technology, and what was the third one?
Marina Committee.
Marina. Okay, thank you. If you have talked to everybody and everybody has accepted those and I'm not hearing anything, I will make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, I'm sorry now, where was Scott returning to? He's going to the
Fire,
board?
he's going to take over as chair of the Marina Committee, and then he will be filling the trustee vacancies on fire board and utilities.
Okay, thank you.
Item number 18, report by staff members on village activities and projects. Dan Klansky, Dan Lundquist. Anything to add to your reports in the packet? Hearing nothing, I will move on. Excuse me, Dan, did you have anything else to add, or we good with?
No, I just said just what's in the
Okay.
report.
Any questions for Dan Klansky's report in the packet?
Looks good, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Item number 19, review of the financial statements and consideration of a motion to approve the monthly bills. Tasha?
Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question on the finance director's report.
Yes.
Personnel HR responsibilities. We are currently in the process of hiring part-time summer public works and marina staff. Are we not hiring a full-time person for parks to replace the retiree?
At this point, we are not hiring a full-time person to replace the retiree.
Okay.
Are we advertising that position currently or not?
The part-time positions are currently advertised.
Okay, so we're not advertising the full-time, we're switching to part-time. Okay,
Yes, we have not advertised the full-time position.
okay, thank you.
And we're doing that. I don't know. Can you clue me in?
Yes, Dan Klansky and Dan Lundquist feel that they can manage the workload with the, I should say Dan Lundquist feels that he can manage the workload with part-time work only. Dan can chime in here anytime. It's his department, so.
Are you there, Dan?
I don't want to put words in his mouth.
I just feel it's hard to fill in with the little amount of work in the winter with the full-time. We had a hard time getting part-time people for a while, and we're just hoping we can get a couple part-time instead and use them at the busy times instead of another full-time.
Okay.
I will motion that we approve the financial statements as presented.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And I suppose I should make a second motion that we approve the monthly bills as
Yeah,
itemized by Tasha in her
You don't really
report.
need a motion for the financial
Right,
statements.
yeah. Okay. So it's been a long night, Tash. So I'll motion that we approve the monthly bills as noted.
And I'll second, yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Committee reports. Admin committee, no update. Communication technology.
Hasn't met.
No, we have not met, but I know that Heidi had reached out to Quantum, and I actually reached out to a friend of mine there, said, hey, if you guys have any questions. Have you gotten anything back from Quantum yet, Heidi?
They haven't sent me anything, no.
Would you mind if I nudge them along?
Go right ahead.
Okay.
Coastal Byway. Did you have something else, Nate?
Yeah, I was gonna say that was in regards to the video conferencing.
Okay.
The fire
sorry
station.
about that. Okay. Coastal Byways has not met yet. We'll fill, let's make a note, Heidi. We need to track down next meeting date for Coastal Byways and pass along to Mary.
Sure.
Same with Door County Economic Development Committee. If you would reach out to them and let them know that Mary's our designee and walk Mary through that process.
And Mary, if you want any, it's been a while since I've been to a meeting since they kicked me off in December for terming out, but if you want to meet, if you want to have any discussion on there, I can fill you into what's going on there in broad strokes.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay, just reach out to me.
Yeah, thank you.
Emergency Management Plan Committee will never meet as clarified by Denise previously. Finance.
Has not met.
Fire Board did not meet. There's nothing further at this time beyond tonight's agenda item.
Can I go back to finance quick?
Sure, Tasha.
Okay, please be aware that the financial statements will be coming out in May, so we need to schedule a meeting. I will be reaching out to you by email shortly.
Okay.
Friends of Pebble Beach Group.
We're now friends, which is great. The grant machine that is now the staff of Sister Bay, and with, I assume the help of Diane's firm, found a grant for improving walkways and the parking for Pebble Beach. Janelle filled that out. So I don't know if it's a shoo-in, but I think it's a good chance. That's about it.
Okay. Green Tier Legacy. Last meeting, we made significant progress on the sustainability strategy score sheet that was part of the packet for FYI. That leads upon completion to our March 2023 presentation to the state towards certification. We meet again on April 25th. Historical Society.
Met April 7th. Planning for the 2022 season. Chris Kindle market update. They raised the fees from $600 to $900 for the 3-weekend market next year, or 2022, I should say. No garden walk this year. They are going to do a fish boil, and they're also going to do a thing called History Talks at the corner of the past, and they're going to have different parties up talking, starting out with Mitch Larson on the Bunda stores. That'll be June 23rd. In October, Fuzzy Sunstrom will be talking about the Little Sister Resort. So just some history of Sister Bay that some of the people who are in on it will be talking. That's about it.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Ad hoc Land Acquisition Committee.
We had a great walk. Dick Burris led us, since he's been trespassing on that property since he was probably 3. Really, Heidi was there with, and it really showed us the vastness of that property and how many good possibilities and things that we can do with it in the future. I also recently was awarded a co-chair who, despite his lack of charm and overall grumpy nature, is a hell of a bike rider. I look forward to working with him.
Thank you, Chad. Library Commission. Mary, I'm certain that committee member Marge Gretzmacher would certainly be willing to bring you up to speed on the Library Commission, much like Nate offered for DCEDC. If you're interested in that, let me know and I'll put you in touch with Marge. And Heidi, let's just make sure we get Mary the next information on next meeting there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Marina Committee. Chad and or Scott in Pat's transition. Anything to note at this point?
April 13th. We went over the commercial vendor contract, raised the minimum general liability insurance from 1 million to 2 million, following a suggestion from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. That's really about it. Dave given a great, as usual, a great marina manager report.
All right, thanks, Scott. Marina Fest.
We met back in March. Spielbauers will be contacted about fireworks. They did send us a letter saying that there'll be a increase in rates of the fireworks this year. Working on to fill a couple of vacancies in the music slots that we have for the week. Then again, lengthy discussion on the amount paid by food vendors. We came up with a flat rate figure for them to participate. However, since then, the committee has decided to hold off on any bylaw changes. The discussions. I think some people are getting nervous about what we're going to charge. So.
And for Mary and Don's edification, at a high level, the direction, desire from the village towards the Marina Fest committee for some time has been that the committee would move forward and eventually operate as its own entity, taking care of Marina Fest on its own. And that's part of what has led to what will continue now as consideration of increased, albeit realistic, fees for vendors to pay, because it relates to that topic of essentially the committee funding itself, the organization funding itself. Parks, properties and streets, looking forward to the road repair priorities discussion at the May 2nd meeting. Personnel Committee will meet on April 28th. Plan Commission, Denise.
Does anybody have any questions on what we're doing or not doing? Okay.
Okay. SBAA, Louise announced at the last meeting that there'll be a return to a previously used catchphrase slogan on this year's brochure. And that slogan will be Sister Bay, we're up for anything. Louise also reported that her conversation with the new DDC boss, Julie Gilbert, regarding any potential commitment from the DDC's municipal reimbursement funds to go towards a new eco-friendly shuttle bus did not yield such a commitment. Tourism Zone Commission is set to approve the memorandum of understanding regarding the DDC budget at the zone's April 21st meeting. In that regard, I've invited Julie Gilbert for a Q&A and a presentation on the DDC moving forward with our village board at the May meeting, and she has accepted, so that will be part of the regular board meeting on the 17th. Utilities, everything of significance is in the packet. Youth Center has not met, which I will motion that we accept the committee reports.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 20, consider a motion to convene into executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.851C to consider employment promotions, compensations, and performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Wisconsin statutes 19.851G to confer with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is likely or is likely to become involved. More specifically, a discussion regarding personnel matters and a discussion regarding the lots that the village owns in the Stony Ridge development. This will be a closed session for trustees only, and I motion at, I've lost the time here. Do we have a time call, Heidi?
8:37.
Okay, I motion at 8:37 that we move into closed session.
Second.
Roll call, Zashki, yes.
Baker, yes.
Bell, yes.
Berto, yes.
Bronco, yes.
Lyons, yes.
Cox, yes.
All right, at 8:38, we are now in closed session. Heidi, I will thank you. So trustees only, we will go into and join room 1. Okay,
Scott, you great. I was worried about you, Scott.
at 9:44 PM, I will motion that we return to open session.
It was in a dark hole.
Second.
Roll call, Zashki, yes.
Baker, yes.
Bell, yes.
Berto, yes.
Bronco, yes.
Lyons, yes.
Cox, yes.
Okay, we are at 9:44. We are back in open session. Staff, we have no motions to make, but we have 2 directions to staff. One, that staff contact Amy Bennett to confirm we can readjust her contract and revise her contract to up to 20 hours per week at the discretion of the Plan Commission Chair. And if for some reason she gets back to you and says that's not possible, we'll need to reconvene with the board on that. But the expectation is that she would be able to report back that that's possible. So that would be the direction to staff to contact Amy regarding readjusting and her contract, revising her contract for up to 20 hours per week of service.
Rob, you brought up a good point. Maybe we should just address this now before she says, oh, she can only do 12 or 15. I mean, rather than have another meeting, have staff agree to any number up to 20 at this point, and then we can readjust it the next time, re-talk about it, because she may not have 20 hours some weeks, and she needs to be explained that it's probably not gonna be every week. You know what I mean? Rather than just have them call, that doesn't work for her, and then we gotta have.
Yeah, as I was trying to say, that in that direction to staff to revise her contract for up to 20 hours per week at the discretion of the plan chair, that if she comes back and says the company only says this much is available or that much is available, if it's between 8 and 20, just go ahead and move forward with revise. If she comes back, tells staff, I can only do 12 hours, then revise it for 12 hours, let Denise know. And it's at Denise's discretion above the 8 hours per week, what she does. Okay.
Perfect.
The other direction to staff is when you contact Amy, let her know that the expectation rolling forward is that in expanding this contract in terms of hours, the expectation is she begins attending all plan commission meetings and or work sessions, starting with the next plan commission session.
So you want her at next week's plan commission meeting then?
Starting with the next one, correct.
Okay.
If that's schedulable.
Okay.
And then I believe, unless we hear differently here, I believe that includes consensus from the staff that when that revised contract at whatever number it can be possible to be revised to up to and including up to 20 hours per week, that when that's ready, it will be made available to me to sign in the office.
Yeah, I'm assuming they'll do like they did with the original contract and just mail a signed document.
Okay. All right. Do we have anything else we need to note regarding matters to be placed on a future agenda referred to a committee official or employee?
Just a closed session next month.
Yeah.
During the standard board meeting on the 17th.
We can address the issues of the letter.
Yeah.
So just put it for personnel.
Well, and Chad also wants to, well, I don't know. I'm torn now whether Randy says that it's personnel, we should be talking about it all enclosed. I
don't know 100% either, and I don't want to do anything wrong, but I feel like discussion needs to happen, and it needs to be a format where people feel comfortable talking. So however we can give that as a board, that's really what we should be doing as a board.
Okay, so we'll let staff figure that one out then.
Yeah, let them figure it out.
Yeah.
So staff is invited to talk then at that time? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think any staff.
So
that
if you
would-
don't want your comments in open, if you suggest closed or open, that will be up to you. But either way, I think that there still has to be a closed session, possibly for board discussion.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's at the 17th meeting. Okay, anything else?
Was anything addressed on the Stony Ridge lots that staff needs to be aware of?
Yeah, did you accept or deny that offer?
There's consensus that we're not going to accept that offer or any other, we're not accepting that offer based on developing further plans For the
For
lots.
all of the lots.
Yeah, for the lots, for all the lots in general.
So who do you want to contact him to tell him?
Whoever staff feels appropriate should.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm assuming that should be in writing, right? So do you
Not
want a letter signed by Rob or?
I
Can one of
think
us
a
sign it?
contract expires over time in real estate, but maybe just a phone call or an email saying, we're not going to accept that, just so you know, the village has work to do before they're going to be in a position to sell these lots. So it'll expire anyway. We
The
don't.
village
have-
is not accepting, the village is not accepting any further offers on Stony Ridge lots pending our process.
Until further
for this-
notice?
Until
Yeah.
further notice.
Until
Perfect.
further notice.
Yeah, I can call him.
Okay. Okay. Anything else from anybody? At 9:50 PM, I will motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
See ya.